As Bill O'Reilly said, let's do it live. Hello, everyone. We're finally having this discussion about Nation
Woo-hoo!
by Terry Pratchett. A non-Discworld book. Sorry, Alan, my favorite Terry Pratchett book I've read. Spoiler alert, I freaking love this book. And it's wonderful and amazing and awesome and wonderful. And you know what's also amazing and wonderful and awesome?
You.
Two people. Kim and Pete, and also Sarah, who's hopefully going to show up in the chat. She's not feeling well. I hope you feel better. Who was going to join us, but she's with us in spirit. So yeah, anyways, I will let you introduce yourselves. Directions, hard.
Okay.
Go first.
All right. I am Kim. Some people know me as Kaya Fox. I have been a Terry Pratchett fan for like the entirety of my reading life, I would say, because I actually didn't like reading until I was like 11 or 12. And Terry Pratchett was a early introduction to that. So yeah, I love Terry Pratchett a lot. I've read this book 3 times. Spoiler alert, I also love it. It is definitely one of my favorite books of all time. This is Seuss, more importantly.
Hello, Seuss.
Would have been more appropriate thematically if Pratchett jumped up there.
He is curled up against my bookshelf. I was kind of hoping that my camera would go low enough, but it doesn't. He is literally right here, though.
I will allow it. We're already having
A heckler.
in the chat. Thank you, Mitch.
I don't understand how we betrayed you at this point in time.
I mean, let's be honest. How did we not betray Anita?
She chose not to read this, so who is the real betrayer here?
That's true.
And in fact, this is one of the handful of books that I actually have a review for on my channel.
Nice.
Watch it. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I didn't watch it either.
Anyways, Pete, directions. Pete.
Yeah, there we go. Hi, I am Pete from The Ponderings of Pete, which is the channel name that I run. Sort of. I mostly just do lives on my channel nowadays. We'll see how that changes in the next few whiles.
Breaking news?
Maybe. We'll see. It depends on how everything goes because I'm in the middle of a job search. And once that all settles down, we shall see what I can do. Yeah, I like books. I like Terry Pratchett. I have read a handful of Discworld books. Some of them The Watch related. Some of them related to like going postal, stuff like that. And yeah, this is my first.
And you were buddy reading the City Watch books with a really great person.
Yeah. Wait, directions are hard. That person. Yeah, we are on Fifth Elephant, and then there's actually, funnily enough, a bunch of people that just happen to be reading at the same time.
Yeah, you know. Someone's always reading Discworld, I suppose.
True.
And then here's the 4th person who's with us in the chat. Yay, Sarah! Not sure if you heard us at the start, but we hope you feel better. Yeah, so... Also, Anita's still trolling, but that's fine. Yeah, so... Pete.
Yeah.
So did you like the book?
I hate it. No, I loved it.
Yeah,
I really did like it. I thought it's definitely a very thought-provoking book, right? I like how it approaches the topic of asking questions and encourages asking questions in its own way, and just like critical thinking and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that was the big theme of the book that I kind of took away from it, really loving.
Yes, I DNF'd it, Anita, because and that's why I'm hosting this discussion. I'm just here to bounce things up.
Theoretically, if you didn't read the last word, did you DNF it?
True. I guess for context, for why at least Pete and I read this book, at least we were pushed to read this book. There is a Alexandria book club on the Allen server. By the way, Kim's channel, directions, Jesus. Kim's channel, Pete's channel, Sarah's channel, and Alan's channel will all be linked down in the description, if not already. But we read this as part of Alan's Discord book club that we took upon ourselves to create, and Nation was voted by one of the two that Kim said, hey, choose between these two books. It was Terry Pratchett or Le Guin, and Democracy won with Nation. And
Sure.
yeah, that's why we read it. There we go. Words hard. But yeah, so that's the context. The thing that I really liked among the themes that you were talking about, Pete, of just questioning and really a wonder about the world, I didn't expect it to go as deeply into colonialism and anti-colonialism as it did, and it was wonderful. It's Pratchett exploring themes and being overt but not beating you over the head about it at the same time, if that makes sense. So I really like those aspects.
I think different people would. I think there's a certain subset of people that would definitely think that this is beating you over the head with a theme.
They're reading it wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh.
I mean,
Obviously.
only if Alan is the colonialist. Only if Alan.
Alonianism.
But yeah. So, you said 3 times you've read this, Kim. So I guess we can just go into get into spoilers. It doesn't matter.
We should just get into spoilers.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Did you pick up anything new or different on this reread? Anything change for you?
I'm trying to think if there was anything. I think more so than anything, I picked up on certain like Pratchettisms, if that makes sense. Like he does have these reoccurring jokes and these reoccurring like little extra like just silly little things, ways with words sometimes, and to some degree, in his characters, he has sort of, I guess, reoccurring. I can't say character tropes because it's just a small portion of them, but I feel like the precocious little girl is very much just a Pratchett thing, and I think it's because he had a daughter, and while I don't know that she was precocious, I know that Pratchett took a lot of inspiration from her, and so things like that. Also, I think this was the first time that I read it, and in the past I have said that I feel like this is a more is Pratchett taking on a similar themes to one of his Discworld books called Small Gods, and he's taking on those themes from a different angle. Obviously, it's not a Discworld book, and it's from younger protagonists and things like that, but also as a more mature writer. And so I think that he handles those themes in what I would argue is a better way, more nuanced, more. I feel like the percentage of people who would have problems with this book is smaller than the percentage of people that would have problems with Small Gods, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Have you read Small Gods, Pete?
Nope.
Is that one of the ones? Okay, never mind.
It's one that was like without spoilers. It deals a lot with religion, and
I would guess.
Yeah, and I think that people who like there's a certain segment of religious people that would have a problem with it, but there's also a certain segment of people who have religious trauma who would have it would just be hard. Because I tried to read it, I think 3 or 4 times before I actually was able to read it myself.
You're
Whereas
talking
I
about Small
don't.
Gods here.
What was that?
You're talking about Small Gods here.
Yes, yes. Whereas with Nation, I feel like it is much more accessible and much more approachable in that way. I feel like it approaches sort of the themes of religion and questioning and everything like that. And there is this acceptance of the anger that sometimes comes with those. And it's not shown to be a bad thing, but it's also not necessarily shown to be a good thing. It's just a human thing. And I think that that's what I appreciate the most with it, is just how much that human element is encapsulated in all of Pratchett's writing. But I feel like this is just such a good sampling of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked how he approached. He didn't try to portray I'm sorry, I don't remember either of their names.
Mao and Daphne.
Thank you. I don't remember him. He didn't portray Mao's anger very much as self-righteous anger. And I think that sometimes is the pitfall that I think a lot of people who might write things that are anti-religion will fall into, right? I think it's more of like a classical, hey, you get religious trauma and then you become an angry Reddit atheist that hates everything to do with religion, kind of arc that is the pitfall of some writers. And I appreciate that he didn't do that. That he and it's interesting. It's definitely like a different space, because he kind of is talking to the self same gods that he's questioning, and that's kind of a different situation. Even though there is some inherent kind of relatability to the questions that he's asking, even to our world where that same conversation is impossible. So.
Speaking of our world, so I guess 3 things, but I'll start off with the our world thing. I admit it took me a minute to get used to get into Nation, because it doesn't feel. I wouldn't say that it's got like a different writing style. It just, the tone is different, because it's written for debatably a younger audience. It's apparently a non-Discworld book for young readers, quote unquote. But also there are references to our real world. It's set in 19th century, 1800s, whatever that century that is. I can't remember. Math is really hard. But there's references to England and governments and stuff like that are not fantastical. So there's an extra suspension of disbelief. I feel like that you kind of have to, at least for me, that I have to deal with when fantasy has real our world references. It takes a little bit more work for me to get into it. But once I was into it, I was like, oh, this is great. And even though they are younger protagonists, Mao and Daphne, I think the way Pratchett handles them as individuals, they're not naive, but they're very, I don't know, they're just very well-formed 3-dimensional characters, and they don't feel childish. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a sense of they were forced to grow up because of their situation, but
Right.
they also don't have the knowledge and the experience with certain things, so that they still feel like kids.
Yeah.
But not cartoonishly so.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not the only one that...
Oh, and I will admit that it kind of took me a little bit off guard when I first started it, because I remembered it starting on the Boys Island. I didn't remember all the additional stuff at the beginning, where it's sort of setting up the plague that's happening and why they're looking for Daphne and all that stuff. Like I didn't remember that stuff at the very beginning. So whenever I started reading, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't where this book starts. I remembered it starting at the boys' island, and then Mal goes to paddle out, and there's a big old wave. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so yeah.
Although the very, very beginning of like the story of was it Emo Io, the creation story, I'm like, yes, I'm all for this creation stories. Give it to me. So, and I like how it kind of came back. How that reference really played a very, very major role in the story as a whole. I really, really liked that.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, I guess for context, for anyone that, even though we're doing spoilers, whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah, there's the wave that impacts the entire islands, and another thing I didn't expect. This is a dark book. Like, this is really, really dark and bleak. Like, I'm like, oh my god, poor Mao, literally having to bury his entire island and literally disassociating himself, dealing with that trauma, just to be able to not bury, but send his people out into the ocean. Like, I'm like, Pratchett, seriously? Are you saying this is for young kids? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah. And I guess going back to sort of that anger, I think that part of the reason why that anger didn't come off is sort of that self-righteous anger of, that often happens in books like this, where characters do question their beliefs and question their gods, is because that anger was almost always, if not always, tied to grief. And so through that anger and that grief, like, you could kind of, I just wanted to give the poor kid a hug.
Yeah.
Every time.
And then on the flip side, you've got poor Daphne, like, having to deal with losing her mother in childbirth, and the dual grief of losing her mother and her sibling.
Yes. And then having to be partially raised with a extremely controlling grandmother. That was something that I feel a lot of young women in my area that I grew up in could probably relate to a lot of things that happened with Daphne in that book. I'll just say.
Yeah, I think it even says it on the back of the book or something like that. You have Mao wanting to become a man. Like, that's the whole reason he's by himself, really why he's alive. And then you have poor Daphne, she has these societal and cultural expectations set upon her as a girl to become a woman. And they're both trying to find their ways to become who they are as individuals, without, like, literally the cultural norms and expectations, they're literally just completely outside of that, because they're isolated and they're by themselves. And I think it's interesting when you start getting more people coming to the island, that they're challenged yet again, but also kind of building a new society with these new people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, what about you, Pete, before you fall asleep?
I'm sorry. I think that it was very interesting. I like that he didn't like describe every arrival. I think I know that's a weird thing to, I don't know, just like that it was a slow buildup of people, and sometimes they just appeared and things were there, and he kind of focused on Mao and Daphne's journey, because, like, while Mao was like the chief, quote unquote, he couldn't really do a lot of the chief things and keep track of everybody.
Mhm.
and kind of that was shown through his perspective in an interesting way, I think. Just because like he was dealing with grief this entire time, and you often are gonna kind of go. I think everybody was, so there was a certain amount of autopilot that I feel like that kind of indicated
Yeah.
within the nation, and we see them come out of that when they start becoming more active in the story. Like I feel like there's a gradual that if you look at people besides Daphne and Mao in the story, there's like a gradual shift where they might be mentioned once or twice, and then they eventually become more have more agency, as it like in the background kind of feels like they're getting through their grief and becoming, actual people again to a certain extent. Like I don't know if that's the way I want to phrase it, but they're learning to deal with the grief that they've done and learning to take control again. And I think that's in no small part, of course, to Mao.
Yeah. To kind of piggyback off of about how, like, as people were arriving, they weren't like specifically called out. The one character that was called out is Ataba, and I loved is actually a really strong word. I was really compelled by the challenges that Ataba had specifically for Mao. And one of the passages, like, I don't know, just Ataba's whole belief in belief and faith of the gods versus Mao, and it's just the whole depiction of like the gods, but it's really their internal like consciousness that's really talking to them about like, hey, this is not right, and is that a god type thing. I liked that character. Hello,
Yeah.
hi. No, Mitch. But I don't know if it's a mic, but there's like a click, 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 click. It's not a big
Yeah,
deal.
I hear it too.
It's always. Yep, it's Pete.
Yep.
Damn it, Pete. Anyways, yeah, I just like I can't remember the exact. I was trying to go through my notes to like see what I actually noted. But I remember mentioning something like akin to like, oh no, as soon as people started showing up, is this going to be like a Lord of the Flies, not Lord of the Flies situation, but like, I like I thought it was going to be like it was going to have a much more negative impact, and like they weren't gonna Mao and Daphne were gonna those cultural things were gonna be reinforced with people arriving. So when it actually blossoms into this whole community that is it just becomes this new community, becomes a new oh gosh, what are the name of the people?
A new nation?
Yeah, there you go. Yes, that. So
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's one of the it definitely goes with the old adage of like sometimes in the midst of the greatest tragedy, it's the time that is the best time for a lot of change, especially societally. So I think that again, going back to just how grief changes people, and while I think there were definitely some that clung to some of the older traditions, there was also a lot of growth even in the villagers. Though a lot of this is kind of shown through like Mao and Daphne's perspective, so a lot of the changes for Daphne were to her. But she also like pushed back. I don't know. I loved like her like scientific, just how her like the difference between I don't know how to say it. Um, it's all in vibes in my head. Just the difference between like the scientific and the proper side of her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like I felt like that war was very subtle, but once you look back on it, you're like, oh, I see that a lot heavier in retrospect.
Yeah. Like her dad encouraging her, like her wanting to look at the stars, and her dad getting her a telescope, but her grandmother's like, oh, girls don't do stuff like that. And he's like,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
that was very vocal, but I feel like there was more, like within some of her thoughts and stuff like that. I felt like that there was a little more subtlety to that that
Well,
I didn't catch until afterwards.
I loved her whole experiment with the beer and the whole process where she's like sitting there and trying to figure out, okay, what is the process of making this? Is it the time? Is it the voice resonance? Like her just sitting there trying to figure all of this out and like doing like the scientific process of
method.
taking away each factor. That was one of my favorite like little montages because
And again, it all coming back plot wise, where she
yes.
uses that to poison
Mm-hmm.
Fox Slip, which one of the passages I have noted here is related to that. One, as an aside, I think it was hysterical how there's that callback to her trying to shoot Mao when she first
Oh, yep.
um and Mao says, I don't want to be shot a second time, remember? And she says, I'm sorry about that. I thought you were a savage. And he's like, what's a savage? And she pointed the pistol towards Foxlip. Someone like him. He's dead. And I'm like, yes, because savages are people like Foxlip, who's a
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, and it's funny because so the last time I read this I think was in 2020. So whenever um whenever I got to that part, like I had some anxiety because I was like, oh no, I don't remember. Does he get mad? Like what even happens here? And I don't know if that was just because like we were in Daphne's head and Daphne was kind of thinking like, oh, don't remember that Mao, don't remember that Mao. And then he did remember it. But he was,
There's
fine
a
with it.
there's a grace and
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness and understanding of like these two people were scared, they're alone, they don't know each other, like,
Mm-hmm.
and as they become closer they realize, oh, I'm great. So
Yep. We're all just people. We're all
It's
just
fine
people.
to forgive.
Yeah. But yeah.
I love the scenes of them like learning each other's languages, by the way. I thought that was so sweet.
Yep. Yep. That and whenever she first like brought the bird book out and Mao is like freaking out about it because they're like so colorful and everything. Yeah. Yeah. It's there I loved all the like little moments like that. Here's a question for both of you. Did you know the thing about pigs that you've learned in this book potentially? Where you can't milk pigs.
Oh, yes, I mean, I knew that. You can milk goats and you can milk cows.
Yep.
No,
But
I did not.
apparently you have to be creative if you want to milk a pig.
Yeah, that was another scene that was absolutely hysterical. Him just like running by,
Covered in mud, shoving the
like-
milk. Yes. Yes. Oh gosh. But yes, I guess for context, for anyone who hasn't read it, basically there is a baby who needs milk, and the mother is not eating and can't produce the milk, and so Mao finds a pig that's recently had baby pigs, and you can't milk a pig, and so he literally covers himself in like pig stench and like crawls up to suckle the pig himself to like be able to get this baby milk, which luckily it was not described in like detail to any degree.
Well, it was just the idea. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, sweet Mao.
Yes, like the
Thank you,
fact that
wonderful.
he was
So,
willing to do that to save a baby's life, I think spoke volumes about how dedicated he was about keeping every single person that arrived at his island alive from that point on.
Mhm.
including
And
Kaba, who he
oh
disagreed
yeah,
with, but that
yeah,
he, even with the people he disagrees with, he's like, nope, same person. I'm
mm-hmm.
still gonna, honor them. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, no. But and I also really appreciated the theme of, I guess, helping each other, but letting people help you.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that at the very beginning on the boys island or whatever, Mao, like there's and men help men, that's the whole thing. And then he's working so hard to do everything himself for so long on the island and to protect all these people all by himself, and he's not really letting anyone else help him until they are actually to the point where they are preparing for essentially war, a battle, whatever. And then Daphne's like, hey, why don't you let people like
Do things.
kind of figure this out themselves? I think they're going to need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the them doing the doing like the test shots or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually kind of funny. Because there was the one that like just what was it? The guy that got his hand stuck or whatever in the
in the barrel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. And he's like, how did he get his hand stuck in there? Well, it rolled back on him. Oh gosh. Yeah. But yeah, and then how the paper vine woman, or like the what did they call her at first? Like the strange woman or something like that.
Yeah, so
Disturbed
remind me,
woman?
was it the mother who couldn't
It was the first mother who had the baby who couldn't feed her baby.
and she was the silent woman?
Yeah, the silent woman. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they called her something like the other woman or the odd woman or something like that. But then eventually she started being known as the paper vine woman, and how that kind of all came around in the end. I really appreciated that.
Yes, I did like that. I can see it in my head. So I'm trying to see if like maybe
I can see her just standing triumphantly over the cannon.
Cannon, yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. The universe doesn't want me to find out her name.
Unknown woman.
Mm.
Unknown woman.
There you go.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, that also was the Unknown Woman was such an excellent, like another excellent portrayal just of dealing with people that are dealing with grief. Of just like, hey, sometimes there isn't much you can do.
You can just
You have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You don't have to force them, just like treat them as humans, and they're giving her like small tasks or whatever, and
give them what they can, what they can handle, and then eventually they might be able to come out of it.
And that's telling of like again this support system that Mao and Daphne and the entire all the people that come to the island are creating. That she even lets who there was the other it wasn't Daphne, there was the other
the one that gave birth on the island.
Yes.
I think it's like Kale, maybe.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
The paper vine woman lets her take her daughter. So trusting, like, yep, you can take her, and support her and feed her or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, the support system that's this community has really just not made, but like it's really ingrained in the community that it's automatic that we're gonna support everyone, we're gonna help everyone, regardless of what they can or cannot do, and
Mhm.
everyone playing to their strengths and supporting everyone else's weaknesses. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's a very, I guess, satisfying story of humanity coming together at a time of crisis. And it's funny because you briefly mentioned Lord of the Flies earlier, and we're like, talking about how you were afraid it was going to kind of go in that direction. Yes, it is a wonderful society. It's lovely.
Not
But
Lord of the Flies for anyone that's only listening. It was
yeah, not Lord of the Flies. But Lord of the Flies is actually one of my least favorite books. I don't like it. And it's not literary reasons. It's I read it whenever I was 14, so I did not have a whole lot of literary knowledge at the time, but just from the basic, I guess,
Ideas.
I guess almost the thesis
Mm.
of the book of like this is what would happen. This is human nature. This is what will like people will devolve to. And I
this
feel
is
like
the antithesis of that.
exactly
The Lord of the Flies.
yes I feel like this is very much the antithesis of it, and that's probably why it holds such a special place in my heart, because it does just, even whenever people are hurting, they are reaching out to help other people. And I don't know, that's just such a valuable thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we help others to either help ourselves or to distract ourselves from the pain that we're feeling. So
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's very effective. I don't know. That's something that, if you're trying to make someone else happy, then sometimes you can forget your own grief or your own sadness. But yeah.
To pivot a little away from the themes, but more plot stuff. So the whole going down into the like burial chambers,
Oh yeah.
all of that.
Grandfather's Cave.
Yeah, Grandfather's Cave. Thank you. I think that was such a great culmination of so many themes. Well, really all of the themes that Pratchett was exploring in this, of the belief systems, faiths, and gods, the cultural expectations of your forefathers and society, and then literally moving past all that stuff, getting to the very end, moving past all the grandfathers. You have this wonder that at the very end, like the British Empire like wants, like, oh, we need to take this back, and that Mao and Daphne are like, no, it's staying here. If people want to see it, you come here. We're not taking this out. And and just the I love that they become part of the Empire, but not as scientific, like as scientists, in a scientific society. I'm like, this is amazing.
I also loved how at the end, when Daphne's father arrives, this is something that I didn't remember, how he just chills out there for a while. Like he just hangs out and he like plays cricket with them and like all this stuff, and he just stays there for a bit. He like, I don't remember if it specifically says how long, but I guess I got the impression that it was probably at least a week or so.
Yeah.
That he just hangs out, and at first he is very like, what are you talking about, Daphne? Like, are you okay? Like, well, to be fair, her first words whenever she like came to him was like, "Oh, don't worry about the blood on my shoulder. I just sawed someone's leg off." So like understandable concern. But he just being there, and you kind of got to see how where Daphne's curiosity and acceptance came from, and you got to see his shell that he's built since Daphne's mother died. You got to see that melting away a bit in this new place around these people, and I really appreciated, I guess, that because we had only really seen him, obviously in the flashbacks and how he dealt with the grandmother, and how once Daphne's mother died, he kind of did wall himself off a lot more. And so getting to see all that melt away, was it was just a very like lovely, touching thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's what was I gonna say? I can't remember exactly like the end results if they mention what the grandmother does, but
I think she goes to America.
That's right.
Yeah, she goes to Boston, right? Or something like that.
And it's like ordering people around, and it's like,
yeah,
she basically found her like her calling. The aspect that I love about Daphne's dad is that he's 186 people or however many people.
I think it was like 139 or 138. Yeah.
A ton of people had to die for him to become king. And just how everyone around him is deferring to him as king, and he's not actively, but like he's not acting kingly. He's treating everyone equally and with respect, and he's like pushing back on what those expectations are. Because if I remember correctly, the people that come with him when they finally get to Daphne, they're like, kind of like, oh, you must do this, and he's like, no, we don't have to.
It's my daughter, sir. Chill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And once so whenever he first arrived, he didn't know that he was king yet, though. So I think that was once the boat with the gentleman of last resort, which came like a week later or so. But yeah, he very much was just like okay, let's talk with this, let's deal with this. And I also liked that sort of resolution, because obviously there was a lot of foreshadowing, because how many times did the book say how many people had to die before he became king and everything? And then on top of that, it was like with getting to know him through those flashbacks, it was much more understandable that the end resolution would have been accepted by him as a king, because he was obviously a man of science. That's what he valued. That's what he was interested in. And so he wasn't interested in conquest and in owning this island. And so I feel like that the resolution is a lot more like believable and plausible, because he was a scientist king. Like he wasn't like bred and raised into this idea of conquest and rulership and wealth and like just trying to get more money.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how his first reaction when, Daphne came up to him and saw him for the first time in ages, his reaction was not to try to take her away from this strange thing that he didn't understand. His reaction was to try to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And that just speaks to his character so much that I loved.
Yes. And the whole conversation that him and Daphne had, where she was trying to like logically prove to him that that these people potentially had a telescope at some point,
Yeah.
and like it sort of came out like he didn't necessarily not believe her, she just had to have a strong argument.
She had to
Mhm.
prove it, but like
Mhm.
again, use the scientific method of like, hey, you know, and then she goes in like, well, they must have had glass, and then they would use refractor, do refracting or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, because I don't know, just like that whole conversation just made my heart very happy, because it was just like a whole like very much it was a debate, but not a debate of, I guess, disparagement or like trying to
It was a
like
productive, actual productive,
exactly.
not
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, that whole exchange was just lovely.
Mhm.
Speaking of exchanges, when Mao and Daphne are saying goodbye, no more words. We know them all. All the words that should not be said, but you have made my world more perfect.
Oh.
I lost it. Like, I didn't expect to feel so connected to each character individually, but also like how he made their connection so believable and so impactful that I felt that like emotional connection of when they do have to separate and leave each other. It just uh, I love this book so much. Like
Yeah.
I guess where does this rank in your Pratchett read, Kim?
I mean, I rate it 5 stars.
Or I
I
should say
often
rank, not rate.
I often say that my favorite Pratchett book is the last one that I read. So that's very difficult for me to say. It's definitely very high up, though. I would say it wouldn't surprise me if I actually did sit down and what bracket it out or whatever, do something like that. It wouldn't surprise me if this one came out in my top 10. But I can't sit here and list out my top 10 favorite Pratchett books off the top of my head.
Um,
Whichever book has copious amounts of Sam vibes. That is very true. That is very true.
Yeah, I think the only one that didn't happen with me, where it was like, oh, my favorite one is the last one,
Mm-hmm.
was probably Making Money. I don't know, but for pretty much every other Pratchett book, it's been like I feel like there's just been this gradual evolution of my appreciation for him
Mm-hmm.
and how he approaches all of the themes and everything. And just every one, I'm just like, oh, that was so fun. How is he going to top that? Oh, let's do a completely different thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
think
I
Making Money was,
love
like, specifically like they were like, ah, I wanted you to do more banking, but
Really?
yes, I felt like that we were very distracted from the banking most of that book.
Auditor Pete.
Look, yes, Anita, we are still going.
Yes, we are.
You have more time to read Belly of the Bow, Anita. Why are you here?
It's true. It's true. You should be dusting us right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I guess still going, but I guess an appropriate way to maybe wrap up this discussion because we were going almost an hour now. Is the last section of the book, the today section. I mean, it was already emotional when they had to separate themselves, or they had to, they were going their separate ways. And then just reading how they all, like how I don't know how they passed away, how they literally Daphne died and they shipped her body on the ice to Nation and put her in the water along with Mal, where he had been put 2 months prior. I just thought it was so It was so beautiful. It was a beautiful goodbye to this book. A beautiful just depiction of their friendship and just the depth of that friendship and the impact that each other made. Or that each made on each other. There you go. It was just so good. Again, and this is supposed to be a book for young readers. Like, this is a book for all ages. Like, I literally got a copy of this book for my boss's son, and he's 11. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I need your son to read this book. And she's like, okay. So I bought it for him, and hopefully he'll read it soon. So
Your boss trusts you a lot.
yeah.
You know books.
And I won't lie, sometimes I try not to show it, but sometimes whenever people talk about like skipping Terry Pratchett's young adult stuff, we're all eternally young on the inside, at least. That's true. And I guess that, yeah, like whenever it comes to especially Pratchett's young adult, he does key into, I feel like, just a lot of those experiences that everybody has. And he doesn't talk down to the young adult readers. He doesn't talk down to, because even his Tiffany Aching books, I think, are categorized as like, the first one could be like even middle grade, but he never talks down about it. And it is sort of that experience. And so I always kind of, whenever people talk about skipping his young adult stuff, or like how they, oh, it's young adult, and like I already like kind of, that already makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But then whenever they do it with Pratchett, I'm like, okay,
Scene read.
sit down, sit down, read this book, and then say that again to me. Like, and
I think the reason I liked it as a YA book, kind of, it allowed you to bring as much baggage to it as you needed to. So, like, for instance, I think so with when Mao was putting the bodies in the bay, we were mostly told about that. It wasn't necessarily all, like, I think the first one was shown, and then we were told he did a lot more. So you get the impact of the first one, and then after that, the impact that you feel is based on your baggage, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And there are a few other times where, like, I think The Sawing of the Leg is another one, where we're told about it. And we're told about this kind of heavy thing that she's having to deal with. And again, the baggage that you bring is the emotion, is the way that you feel with it. And it could be something that's more eye-opening to a younger reader, or something that's very, like, sympathy invoking for somebody who is much more who's just older maturity wise.
Yeah, like maybe I was just dumb as a younger person, but like I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have picked up on that. Mao was disassociating. Like, that's why we're not getting that description, because he's disassociating from this horrible traumatic experience, and action that he has to do. Like, he's just going through the motions, and like I wouldn't have picked up on that as a younger reader, but as an adult, it's there on the page. It's words would not have changed if I had read this as a younger reader, and now, like, the words haven't changed, but myself as a reader and as a person has changed. That, to your point, Pete, this is a great example of how we as readers bring each of our own experiences to what we read, and how that can affect and inform your experience of a text. But I guess that's what I was trying to say. So
Absolutely. And that's honestly why I love rereading, especially books that happen very impactful to me in the past and that have I don't know, given me certain feelings. And I guess in context, the last time I read this was, I think, summer of 2020. And I was working at Starbucks, and that was not a great time for me. So reading a book about people coming together like this in such a horrible time, and reading it just was, it was a mix of cathartic and hopeful that I needed at that time. And so revisiting that again and having both the memories of that and what it gave me then, and my life for the past 4 years, and being able to read it and tie that in and incorporate that as well. Yeah, it's I know that this isn't the last time I'm going to read this book.
Yeah, Pete, I can't speak for you, but I will just say, because I read Jingo earlier in November, and then I read Nation like a couple weeks later in the same month, and I reading both of those books was just, like you said, Kim, cathartic in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jingo helped me get into a better headspace to appreciate Nation for the story it was telling. So. Pete, agree or disagree?
Yeah,
You're wrong.
I can see that. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I won't say that happened specific. That wasn't necessarily my experience.
No, I know. Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how that would help, especially just like the themes of nationhood and stuff that are explored in Jingo are like advanced versions of or less individual versions of what was explored in Nation. I feel like.
More political than.
Yeah, Nation was very much about like one of the big things was just like the individual joining the collective and the individual's part in the collective, and Jingo felt more like the nation's role on the grand scale of things. Yeah.
Literal War of Nations, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Words.
Anyways, we're almost at an hour, so I feel like there's more to talk about. But we can do a part 2. That's fine.
I was gonna say there's always the option to do another
reread
at some other point. And I was gonna say read it again, but then we can talk more.
I genuinely like. I see myself rereading Nation. But Pete, we gotta get through City Watch first. So
of course. And then we got to get other people to read. We got to get like Anita to finally read this once she's actually broken into Pratchett. Yeah, I think Anita would really like this though.
Yeah. Hear that, Anita?
I am really happy that you both liked it though, because you know how it is. Like one of the scariest things about getting people to read some of your favorite books is, are they gonna hate it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I recently went through that with Nuclear Katie, just not liking Way of Kings, and I'm just like,
oh no. Yeah, and so yeah, seeing the messages in Discord of people just really liking it, like, just really made me happy, because I was like, oh, thank goodness people liked this book.
Speaking of Discord, so I know that there are hopefully will be some people watching this that read Nation with us. Gonna be watching it after the fact. whether you read it with us or if you've read Nation, please definitely put in the comments below your thoughts. Spoiler tag stuff. Spoiler tag. You can't spoiler tag on YouTube. I don't know. Do like spoiler and then enter. And just share your thoughts. Like, this is a book ripe for discussion, and I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm gonna speak for Kim and Pete and say they would love to hear your thoughts as well. And by here I mean read.
As long as they're good thoughts. As long as it's not like this book was trash. How could anyone like this?
I'm just gonna auto delete that stuff. I've already got a filter set up. But yeah, so definitely share your thoughts in the comments down below. Or actually, best option, just join Alan's Discord and you can talk to him. So, yeah. But this has been great. I love the discussion. I loved the book. Thank you, Kim, for making us read it.
Forcing it down our throats.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. It's fine.
I mean, technically, people could have voted for Left Hand of Darkness instead.
That's true.
To be fair, I did.
And still, you read the book, so, you know.
They were both good. I just wanted to read Left Hand of Darkness more because I knew more about it.
You can still read it.
It's true.
Anywho,
okay.
I don't know how to sign off on these things. Thank you again, Kim. Thank you again. Directions hard. Thank you again, Kim. Thank you, Pete. And I'm sure I'm gonna be roping you guys into another discussion about something. So
probably.
I look forward to it.
Definitely Discworld related. And Sarah, I hope you feel better. And you should join us on another Discworld read or something. I don't know. So
Men at Arms.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I highly recommend you continue Men at Arms. Sarah, you don't know me, but you should trust me.
Yes. Kim, Alan, and Derry. Those are the three holy trinity of Discworld booktube folks. Okay, making it official. It's gonna be. It's on the internet. Sarah said she will continue. So.
Okay.
All right. So thank you again, guys. Thank you in chat. Thank you again, anyone. I don't know. Again, how do I sign up for these things? Whatever. It's fine. I'm gonna end the stream.
Yes.
Okay. Bye. I'm gonna stream now. Smile and wave.